Welcome back to Against the Cage, your MMA home for all the fight recaps, previews, and exclusive interviews that I know you're looking for, so make sure to give us a like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any of that stuff. My name is Jake Aryeh. I'm joined by my esteemed co-hosts, Mr. Erich Richter and Scott Fontana over there. And guys, let's talk about what happened this past weekend in Qatar. Arman Tsarukyan and Dan Hooker main event. Arman comes out with flying colors in that main event, submitting Dan Hooker in the second round via a arm triangle. And obviously, Ilia Topuria is the champion of that division, 155, and he said that even after that, he wants Paddy Pimblett next. Arman's coming off of yet another win as pretty inarguably the number one contender in that division. Eric, I'll throw it to you. Who do you think that the UFC should go with for Ilia's next challenger?
Well, you said it, Jake. Ilia said he wants Paddy. The UFC's relationship with Arman has been, I would say, checkered over the past year and a half. For those of you that might not remember, Arman missed weight when he was supposed to fight Islam Makhachev. Well, sorry, didn't miss weight. He pulled out of the fight for an injury. The UFC later pretty much said that, that there were some issues with his weight and he wasn't on weight. He had said that it was sciatica or something like that. If I was the UFC, I'd probably do Paddy Pimblett. I think it's worth noting that there's still no premium live event, main event announced yet for the UFC's transfer over to Paramount Plus and over to CBS. So I really just, given Paddy Pimblett's popularity, especially in England and in Europe, Arman didn't exactly ingratiate himself into fans over the past year, and notably this past weekend when he headbutt Dan Hooker. I would say, given all of those things, this is not a meritocracy. Yes, Arman is probably the better fighter, but no, do I think he will get the title shot next?
Scott, what do you think? Who should the UFC go with?
I'm not saying anything you said is wrong explicitly, Eric, but I will say this for me personally. I would question the legitimacy of Ilia Topuria's reign until he beats Arman Tsarukyan or the man who beats Arman first. I think that we have a 1A in Ilia and a 1B in Arman, and frankly, you could interchange them, and I wouldn't even argue with you because we have somebody who is very distinctly the best guy in the weight class before Topuria arrived, other than Makhachev, who has now left, right? I don't think you can keep going this much longer when people very clearly see that he is the other best guy. The results are there. They put him on center stage as the main event, the A side of their most recent event, the biggest fight night that they've put together in 3.5 years, I believe we said, for the event rating, right? I think he needs to erase the doubts, Topuria. He needs to have this fight. And I want to see it, and I do think they will, if depending on what their plans are, right? The wild card is exactly what you mentioned, Eric. That whole thing with January. What are they going to do with that? Do they already have plans in motion? Is it really already going to be Paddy and Ilia? We don't really know that just yet, right? I'll say this, though. Topuria, well, not Topuria. Tsarukyan certainly seemed willing to step up to the plate. If they come to him, they're like, hey, we need you in January. He'll do it. And frankly, the UFC is going to like hearing that.
Yeah, 100%. I think that if we're going with Mr. Box Office, Paddy Pimblett is probably the bigger fight, but I definitely like that point that you made, Scott. Like, Tsarukyan, uncrowned champion might be the wrong word because it's not like he was an interim title holder or what have you, but he was the number one contender in January, and he's the number one contender now, and that's one win later too, right? So, and he looked fantastic. Yes. Yep.
So yeah, I'll dive in there a little bit. The UFC, I don't think the UFC cares about that, just quite frankly. Like Khabib Nurmagomedov, when he was on a world-beating train, fought on the prelims of a title fight that should have been his when Conor McGregor was fighting Eddie Alvarez. I'll just
he
also
fought on
just
the prelims
add,
of the biggest
I'll,
event that the UFC has done in their whole life.
I'm just saying, and also Sean O'Malley fought Aljamain Sterling. I don't think anyone really. He only had one win in the top 10 at that point. Merab Dvalishvili obviously wasn't going to fight Aljo, but Umar Nurmagomedov was there. There's been other guys. The UFC is willing to bypass the legitimacy question to do what is more, I guess, fun in the eyes of sales.
I think though the situation here is different than some of those other ones, right? Because Habib was not what we know him to be today. He was not a star. He was one of those guys that, like, if you were paying attention, you knew he was a monster. That's all it was. Arman Tsarukyan had a title shot. He was booked as the B-side of the first event of this year, the first pay-per-view event of this year. He is a very known quantity. So I don't know if it's apples to apples here, you know? And I get it. Like, you're bringing us similar examples. There's not always going to be a one-to-one here, right? I think the problem with it is there is actually a lot of momentum behind the idea of Arman being the best guy, and there's a little bit of pub with him. He actually brings in an audience too. He's not Paddy. He's not the same drawing power as Paddy, but he is something there. There is something that people are paying attention to, people are talking about with regard to Arman Tsarukyan. And frankly, I don't know what else you do with Arman if you don't give him the title shot. You can do things with Paddy Pimblett. There are a lot of fights you could do with Paddy Pimblett. Paddy hasn't necessarily like earned the title shot. So there are a lot of fights you can do with him that make a lot of sense. Arman, what do you do with him? He just sits around. That doesn't make any sense. And it's not good business either.
I'll pose this question. Do you think that you could do Paddy first, but then Arman's next fight is for the title? Or would you still say that that is not... would you rather do it
He
the
has
other
to
way
fight for the
first?
title. He shouldn't fight again. He said that he's not going to fight again.
Which one are you talking about?
For Arman.
Arman, yeah.
Oh, Arman. Okay.
Yeah, Arman said that he's not going to fight again. He shouldn't. I don't blame him for wanting the title shot, saying that he's earned the title shot he has. Now, the reason that I brought up the Habib comparison was that Habib had a bunch of pullouts, so the UFC was afraid of him not making weight in a big fight. Remember the jokes when Habib and Tiramisu or whatever the jokes were back in the day? That is, I think, the reason that I brought the comparison in. Yes, Arman is probably the best guy at the division. No, do I think that he will get the title shot next, and he might have to be a backup fighter again.
I think kind of to your question, Jake, I think if they're planning to do, if they already have this in the works or something like that, if they have Ilia Topuria against Paddy Pimblett in January, then hey, it solves the problem. Everybody gets what they want, because realistically, it's still pretty much the same timeline that we would get the next fight with Arman Tsarukyan and Ilia Topuria. Topuria doesn't keep the busiest of schedules. He doesn't seem like he is particularly interested in getting in definitively 2 fights a year. He kind of just, it seems like he is very content to fight on his own time. And the UFC understands that they have something with him that they can do that with a little bit. I don't think they want him once a year, but it's not necessarily twice a year. But yeah, if they can fit it in January with Paddy Pimblett, that makes a lot of sense. And then, obviously it could go the other way. Paddy Pimblett could win, but then you've got Arman Tsarukyan somewhere in the second half of the year, and that makes sense. But I think if they're not doing that right away, if for some reason Ilia is not in a rush to fight still, or if they do want to say, hey, let's give it to Arman, but maybe we'll just make him earn it real quick. He's going to have to turn around a little bit, get one of those short notice fights that they made Aljamain Sterling have after he defended the belt, right? You got 2 months. You're gonna get ready, and that was as a champion. I could see that, and Arman seems ready for that. He really does. Like he kind of mentioned, like, I'll just take the fight when we interview him. So, I don't know. It's interesting how this can play out. There's a few different ways.
One thing that I would add too, and you brought it up, is like if Ilya's not fighting in January, which I think that we expect him to fight in January, but it's not been announced. If he doesn't fight in January, this fight might not happen for a while. Ilya's not the most active champion, and they want to have a fight in Spain. So if he doesn't fight in January, say he fights in February, March, or April, if the next fight has to be in Spain, you might not see Arman again until the winter of 2026.
So the other thing about the Spain thing is an interesting thing, because I've talked with Ilia about this before. And as much as the UFC, Dana White said he wants to fight in Spain, right? That was one of the things when they put him on the spot, he said Spain would where he'd want to go. He doesn't want to do, Dana White does not want to do stadium shows. He doesn't want to do outdoor shows. But Ilia is saying he only wants to fight where Barcelona's stadium is, right? It was, I forget the name of it.
Real Madrid, I believe he's a fan of, no?
Was it?
I thought it was Barcelona. I don't know.
What's
Soccer.
the? I'm not as good with the soccer stadium names, but
Yeah.
it's
San
an outdoor
Bernabeu.
soccer stadium. That's
Oh,
the one,
there you go.
exactly.
San
Thank you.
Bernabeu, yeah.
Yes, that is exactly the one. He wants to fight there. He doesn't want to fight just in Spain. He wants to fight there. If it's not there, I don't know that they're getting Ilia there.
In a
Mm.
past life, I was actually a pretty big soccer fan, so that came in handy.
All
But
right.
I do want to get to Arman's performance against Dan Hooker. He's got 3 finishes in his last 4 fights. Scott, I'll throw this to you. Do you think that he did what he needed to make a stamp to get that next title shot, like we were kind of talking about last week and what you and Arman had discussed as well?
As far as the performance, yeah, I mean, I think this is exactly what he needed to do in the cage, short of, him going out there and getting a head kick knockout or something like that, something really quick, a spectacular KO. But that's not really his trademark, right? This was exactly the best type of a performance that we tend to see from Arman. He ran through Hooker. It was an answer for anything Hooker had for him. There was a point where Hooker drops down for the guillotine and he gets out of it so easily and is just in great position. There was nothing that Hooker had to offer him, and it was a great thing to put on tape. A lot of what we saw from him showcased him as the best lightweight contender. So he can't ask for much more.
Eric, how about you?
Can't ask for much more. Totally agree. I brought up the headbutt again in leading up to the fight. Fans were pretty upset about it. Yeah, if you look at some of the,
Yeah, it's not good. He shouldn't have done
it
it.
wasn't good. It wasn't good. It kind of gives me like Bilal Muhammad vibes from back like when before he was the champ and leading up. Bilal was like, I want to be the champ, I want to be the champ. And he's like, didn't really vibe with the fans, I guess. I think that matters. I think that's why Bilal took so long to get the title shot. I think that could be why it stalled out for Arman. I mean, maybe that's just me reading too much into it. But yeah, I mean, excellent
I think a
performance. He
little.
is so skilled. Yeah, maybe I'm reading into it too much.
I
But
see
he is
what a
super,
hint of what you're saying. I get, but
I
maybe
don't
not to the
know.
same extent as Bilal. But
Maybe
please.
not to the same extent, right? Like maybe it's not the apples and apples, but regardless, I think there's something there. Maybe it's a half-baked take. Anyway, Arman is probably the most talented 155er. I mean, and if anyone hasn't watched it, Arman fought Islam Makhachev back on the prelims when they were, basically babies in the UFC. Watch that fight. Arman is talented, man. Like, and he was kind of, relatively unknown. Makhachev was a pretty hyped up prospect at that point, but man, like he is talented. He is skilled. He might be the best 155er. He's just not the champ right now. So that's just kind of how it goes.
Yeah, it's kind of like what we were talking about earlier. Eric, I do kind of want to get your thoughts on that guillotine escape because we haven't seen that much at all. I was listening to Renato Moicano on Ariel, and he was like, honestly, Dan Hooker, if he had any good ground game, maybe he could have taken the back or what have you. But honestly, if you're getting some guys doing that type of spinny move in a guillotine, it'd be pretty hard to react to it. I'd be like, what's going on? What did you think about that?
Definitely made it look easy. I mean, look, Arman is that was I guess part of my issue going into the fight was the opponent. I even wrote this when I wrote my prediction piece for it. When I had Arman to win inside the distance, I just didn't agree that Hooker should even be here. I was like, I don't agree with Hooker's rating. I don't think he's a top 5 fighter in lightweight, and I would rather have seen Arman. I'd rather have seen like a rematch with Oliveira because that fight was so close. And I think that Oliveira just fought for the belt. I actually think that rematch would have made sense considering how close that fight was.
But nobody
Dan
wanted to
Hooker,
fight Arman.
I know that's the thing. It's
It
like
doesn't
it
matter
makes it
what you
so
want because
hard,
nobody wanted it. Yeah.
right?
This was the fight that
It's
they
so
could put
tough.
together.
It's yeah, I hear that. It's just so tough because like I don't know that a Dan Hooker win did a whole lot. Didn't we learned a whole lot? I don't know. I guess about Arman. I already knew that Arman could do that to Dan Hooker.
It was more of a reminder, I would say, rather than we
That's
didn't learn anything new. It was more of a reminder. And Scott, like you said, like Dan didn't really have too much for him. There wasn't like really much of a moment in the fight besides like the second that he was trapped in the guillotine that it looked like Dan was having any success, and then we were very quickly reminded about how skillful Arman is on the ground. Like that first one, he just escapes immediately, gets into side control, and the second one as well.
Listen, when they're putting together a fight like this, I have to think. Obviously, we heard from Dan Hooker. He asked for this fight, right? This is the one he stepped foot for because he had something to gain. Whereas the last time that Arman was looking for that fight, he didn't have anything to gain. So that's why it was different. But I think from putting together this fight, the UFC is getting two potential results, the most likely two results, right? Number one, Arman wins, and he looks damn impressive. And now they can build him back as a contender again. It washes away all that stink from January. Now they've got this to focus on, that he just blasted Dan Hooker. And you can think what you think about Dan Hooker, but the UFC's machine has built Dan Hooker enough to be a capable, somewhat of a functional win for him to be looking good here. I think that for that purpose. And then on the other side, if somehow Dan Hooker comes out and he stuns the world, they could put Dan Hooker in there, and that's a title fight if they really want to. And he's a fun guy, or they could move him onto the BMF belt, and that could be a fun fight. It's win-win for them. But I think those were the things that probably were crossing the minds of how they get what they gain from it.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, Dan Hooker's not he's no scrub. In the past like year and a half, like tattooed Dan Hooker is like kind of become a little bit of a mythical fighter. He built up a pretty good win streak. I mean, a win over Mateus Gamrot, like that means something, I would say. He had some good other ones as well that aren't maybe immediately coming to mind, but I mean, Arman came away with the win. That's what he needed, and he did it, like you said, in very impressive fashion. So it's hard to deny that.
I hear you on the
Yeah,
Dan Hooker love. I just feel like you got a little bit fortunate on the split decision wins, those last two. That's just me, though.
fair enough. But let's talk about the co-main event. Ian Machado Gary winning a very impressive decision over the former champion Belal Muhammad. I mean, coming into this year, Belal was the champion, and Ian won in a very much stand-up fight. Belal going for a lot of takedowns, Ian stuffing him. But I'll throw it to you, Scott. Now that we know this welterweight kerfuffle that we had in this past weekend and the weekend beforehand in MSG, there were so many big welterweight fights. And now that we kind of know we have the lay of the land of all these top fighters, these important fights, who's coming away with wins, we've got Ian Machado Gary this past weekend. Shavkat Rakhmonov is kind of also in the mix in terms of if we're talking about the past 12 months who are coming off of big wins at the top of this division. Michael Morales at MSG and Carlos Praches. And then, of course, we've got Kamaru Usman as well. And I'll posit this to both of you guys, but I'll throw it to Scott. Out of those names that I just mentioned, let's rank them from 5 to 1. Let's go one by one. I think that'll make it a little bit more fun. Who would you say has the most threat to Islam Makhachev? Scott, who's your number 5?
Biggest threat to Islam Makhachev, I'm going at number 5, Carlos Praches. I think I got to start with him at the bottom of this quintet here. He seems the most ripe to just go down as an Islam highlight because I have the sort of takedown defense that you need to really keep it where he wants to be, which is be able to throw hands. It's going to be a fun build up to the fight if they ever do that. I don't think Islam's going to prove the smoking, but he's definitely the distant fifth here.
Eric, who's at your number 5?
Yep, certainly that one I feel like was a little obvious. I'm interested to see what the rest of your list goes, Scott. But yes, Carlos Praches is a distant 5. I would venture to guess that he would close anywhere between plus 350 and plus 400 as an underdog to Islam Makhachev.
We are 3 for 3. I've got Carlos Praches as my number 5 as well. I mean, we did some talking about him last week, and I feel like I would echo exactly what we're saying. He's a fun fighter. Just don't know if he's got the championship rounded game for someone like Islam as well. Scott, I'll throw it back to you. Who is your number 4?
We're going with E. Machado Gary here. This is where it does start to get tough. I think a lot of these guys are not very far apart. I think he's the best in this. Let's say these top 4 here, I mean, it includes Praches, but the best of them at executing a really strong game plan. And that is not to be taken lightly. I think that's a very important thing. If you're fighting someone like an Islam Makhachev, I think you need to be prepared, and he would be. I wonder if the absolute elite level takedown hunting of Islam is going to, if he's going to be able to withstand it. He obviously did a decent job with Belal Muhammad, but Belal is getting a little longer in the tooth, right? I think it's fair to wonder, hey, is Islam distinctly better in that regard than a Belal Muhammad? And also, Islam would not be giving up on it. He would definitely just keep doggedly pursuing that, I think. So I think it's a little bit different, but it would be interesting. I really think so. What do you think, Eric?
I'm on the same wavelength as you. I'm going to go E. Machado Gary at number 4. So, Jake, we'll find out if we're going three for three on this one. But for me, I think that a lot of the same stuff that you said. Very good at implementing a game plan, sticks to his game plan, is calling for a title shot. We'll get to that, but yeah, I would venture to guess that he ends anywhere between plus 250 and plus 300 as an underdog. I think he closed plus 350 to Shavkat Rakhmonov, so I think that maybe slightly less considering he had a good performance there, but still a sizable underdog.
We are three for three, and I look at us go. We're all very much in sync. I was going to echo the exact same things that you guys said in terms of the game plan. I was going to mention, like you said, the takedown defense that he showed off in this fight was definitely very impressive, but Islam's a different beast. I feel like Bilal's takedown game versus Islam's, I would venture to say that Islam's is another level in there. But Scott, who do you have at your number three?
I'm going Michael Morales here. I think he's very dangerous. Obviously, I think he might actually pose the most danger per se, like especially when it's on the feet, because he has the capability to potentially keep this up. He's very big. The question that I have for him in particular is he ready for this fight at just 26? He's very much the kid among the men in this group. So I don't know if that's it. That's the question I think we'd have to answer. Does he have enough experience in the cage to deal with this distinct level up in competition? I know he beat, Leon Edwards, a former champ, not too long ago, but different type of champion here. So I don't know. I've got Morales here, but again, I mean I wouldn't rule him out.
Eric, how about you?
Surprised to see you have Michael Morales over at three. I'm going Kamaru Usman number three. If I were to line the fight ahead of time, I'd say maybe plus 220-ish. A lot of this obviously has to do with what I project the gambling odds would be. Kamaru Usman is certainly a terror in terms of grappling. We saw him really perform well against Khamzat Chimaev. Yes, that was 2 years ago. So I guess when they would fight, it'd be almost 3 years from now. But regardless, Khamzat Chimaev is the 185-pound champion, could easily be a 205er. I think that he's number three, and I'll have an argument for Michael Morales, which I'll give to you next. But yeah, go ahead, Jake.
I I've got to side with Eric on this one. I will say this is where things got very, very difficult.
Yes, for
It
sure.
was like I was looking at this list probably for like a good 10 minutes on just these top three. I'm gonna go with Kamaru. I don't want to give away on who my top two and one is, but I will say we mentioned Michael Morales, Scott, for your number three. The reason why I have him above Kamaru Usman is just because of the sheer physicality. And that I just the way that he dwarfed Sean Brady in the octagon. Although we will have some more on Sean Brady and his size coming in quick hits, so maybe that's an argument that you could make against it. But Scott, who do you got at number two?
Right here, I actually have Kamaru Usman as well. Look, he's a legend. I think he still has, until proven otherwise, he still should be considered an absolute threat here because of the power he brings on the feet, because of his ability to stop takedowns against anyone who's really faced, except for, again, someone who was a weight class above on short notice and very much the best wrestler a weight class above. And he still held his own, right? Like we talked about. The age thing is the question mark here. He's 38. He'd be close to 39 by the time they fight. He turns 39 in I believe May. So the age thing is the real concern that I have here. But I think as far as skill set and that kind of thing, I think he actually has the potential to really disrupt Islam Makhachev here. So that's why I put him above Michael Morales. But it's kind of funny. Like, ideally, one of them would be a little younger or a little older, like closer to that middle range. They're
Yeah.
both just a little farther away than where I kind of feel comfortable with that.
How about you, Eric?
Number two, I'm definitely going Michael Morales here. I think that we saw kind of with Sean Brady, I think we saw how dangerous his power is. And, maybe that's his best takedown defense is the power. He's so much bigger than everyone else at that division. It's really, I mean, sans maybe a handful, but, Michael Morales is humongous. We saw him there at the event. I mean, he's undefeated. He's scary, man. The striking is really, really strong. I think that there's some takedown defense, and he's going to keep getting better too. He's young, so I think that there is a world where if he fights Islam Makhachev, maybe at the White House, maybe in the spring, in the summer, I think there is a world where he's improving his takedown defense. And yeah, I think that he is definitely a major threat to Islam Makhachev. If I were to line the fight, I think you're again looking in the plus 200 range, maybe plus 180 on Michael Morales.
Yeah, and I'll echo what you said, and to address the age thing with Kamaru Usman, that's sort of the reason why I put him below Michael Morales, and also just like what his body's kind of been through. I know we've kind of heard the whole like wobbly knees, like cobblestone knees from Kamaru, and that's something he addressed in his latest post-fight interview, showing that he's like still got it. But I will say, I'm not just that convinced over the win over Joaquin Buckley to put him as much of a threat to Islam Makhachev, but I completely understand what you're saying, Scott, in terms of like there hasn't been enough evidence to doubt him yet. I would probably venture to say is one of the key
That's
points of
where
your
I'm at.
argument.
It's really
Yeah.
I just haven't been proven wrong yet in my head about this where the skills are. But frankly, it could happen at any moment. Fighters dip very quickly.
Yes, and alrighty, let's go to the number one on this podium, Scott. Who is your number one threat to? Well, we already know it, but
Who is ours? Who is
Yeah.
ours?
Yes.
Collective?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
Shavkat Rakhmonov,
Yes, it
guys.
is.
I mean, look, I think I'm probably speaking for you guys here. He is dangerous everywhere. He may have the grappling and size to actually give Islam Makhachev trouble. And frankly, I don't know where you sit. You're the odds maker. I'm not a handicapper, my friend. I would say this line ought to be really darn close. And I would almost feel comfortable siding with Rachmanov today if the two of them were to fight. I think that's who I would think wins. But I mean, I haven't thought about it that much, and there's a lot of time, so we'll see. What do you think, Eric?
Well, good thing for you that I have thought about this stuff. So I'll
Okay,
just give you a
okay.
rundown on Shavkat Rakhmonov's odds in his career. He was minus 435 in a fight that did not happen against Bilal Muhammad, minus 400 against Kamaru Usman, and again a fight that did not happen. Leon Edwards minus 530, again fight didn't happen. He closed minus 350 against Ian Machado Gary, minus 600 against Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. I go on down the list. Now, we haven't seen him in a long time. There's injuries involved here. I think Shavkat, there's injuries involved. He hasn't been. We have no idea where he's at physically. We haven't heard a lot about him, which I always find concerning. Is like, is he training? Is he not training? How bad's the injury? Like,
Well, he was
I feel
just
like
on Aaron Helwani. He says he'll be back in February, maybe.
that sounds great. That sounds great. I hope that that's the case. I would suspect, and I'm not sure if he'll get a tune-up fight. I don't know how he'll look in that. I would say that Shavkat Rakhmonov will be favored if he fought Islam Makhachev, and I think that he could be a minus 150 to minus 130 favorite.
I would have to go with Islam. I think the only reason why is because, and I know he won the Ian Gary fight, but like he looked human in that fight, and I know that Ian Gary comes in, like you said, with a very good game plan, and I mean he proved that his takedown defense is pretty solid. But I don't know, fighting Ian Gary versus Islam Makhachev, I feel like is a very different beast, and I don't know. I feel like Islam's unbeatable, no matter whether he's at 155 or at 170. But you look like you got something to say,
Disagree.
Scott. Okay.
I disagree. I mean, obviously, number one, he is not unbeatable
No, I
because
know
we
that.
saw him lose in the UFC. So there's that. I know what you mean, though, the euphemism of it. But I think what we have here is, if you're referencing that Ian Gary fight, Shavkat is saying he's maintaining that he was hurt going into this, that this injury he's been dealing with actually predated the fight, and that it did not, because he was just on Ariel, he was talking about this. He said it didn't get worse in the Ian Gary fight. It was just something he kind of had to deal with. But one of you mentioned the tune-up fight, the idea. I forget who it was,
Eric.
but
Yeah, that was
Eric, yeah. He did allude to on again on Ariel's show, like, I don't know if I'm gonna get the title shot or not. I'm willing to take another fight in between if I have to. Like, so he seems certainly accepting of that situation, and he wants the title shot. He believes he's done enough, but he wouldn't put up a stink, and he certainly wouldn't be resistant to taking another fight. So if that's the case, unless there's a mandate, then frankly, I could see him absolutely getting skipped over, and he'll have to face one of these other guys, maybe a Carlos Praches or something like that. That would really, that would help boost the profile a little bit, bring some eyeballs onto that fight.
Fair enough. Eric, what do you think about that?
Sounds good to me. I just hope to avoid a world where Shavkat Rakhmonov kind of becomes like a mythical creature and like we see him once, then he's gone again. That would be my only worry. Just to call back to the Rakhmonov and Gary fight, Rakhmonov got, he was going for upper body takedowns a lot. And if you rewatch the fight, he's really going for upper body control, which Ian Gary is really good at defending, like really good. We saw it against Bilal Muhammad too.
Hmm.
Once Shavkat pivoted to like lower body takedowns, getting under the hips, getting under the butt, he found more success there. So just something to recognize. Like Shavkat did change up his game plan and found a little bit more success as the fight went on.
And that's the thing about Shavkat too. I'm glad you bring that up because, like I said, he's very dangerous everywhere. He has such a wide variety of skills that he is proficient at. I don't know that he has like that absolute takeover skill that you're really concerned about, but he can do anything. And he's only not finished a fight one time. It was that Ian Gary fight. This is a finisher. He is minded on the idea of getting that fight over with. So, and I think again, Ian Gary he's an extremely tricky matchup. It's hard to look outstanding against Ian Gary. You kind of just get through it if you can. And that's kind of that's basically a compliment to Ian Gary that he is an extremely hard fighter to do anything really too. So I think that was almost the best case scenario in hindsight. It's going to be an Islam fight wouldn't be easy, but I do think that there's more opportunities for him to take advantage.
100%. And out of all those names, I mean, like we kind of all agree, like that name is probably the most interesting one for him to face off against. So
For sure.
but let's talk about Ian's performance. Let's round out this discussion. In terms of him being in that title picture, Eric, based off of this performance, do you think it warrants a title shot over those names? Or if not, how far has he propelled himself from this performance?
So it's very interesting, right? So like, you go into this fight, the co-main event and main event, both fighters, Ian Gary and Arman, they both need, finishes. They both need to look impressive in order to make the case to get their title shot. Tsarukyan was in a spot where he gets the finish. He looks excellent. Machado Gary, on the other hand, doesn't get the finish. There's an eye poke in there. He defends the takedowns well, but never really close to anything. No submission attempts, no knockdowns or anything of the sort. He called for the title shot very aggressively after the fact, saying, he's not fighting again. You're not going to hear from me until I get a title shot. That's interesting to me. I don't think that he did enough personally. Now, I'm not the matchmaker, but you saw my list. I would sooner give Kamaru Usman a shot at Makhachev's title than I would Ian Gary. It's not anything to do with his skills. I just think that I would have liked to see a little bit more urgency. I had, fight doesn't go to decision as a bet, which is partially tied to Ian Gary aggressiveness and urgency to get a finish. I just didn't see a whole lot of that. But he talked up a good game after the fact, so maybe that can give him something. But I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure that he did enough.
I will say before you go, Scott, I'm not actually all that surprised that it went to decision. I was there in Boston when he was facing off against Neil Magny, and that was a fight where like he could have gone for the finish. Like Neil Magny in that fight looked like he was, on the verge of getting finished. And Ian, patient, calm, collected, he is getting a win over risking, not getting the win, right? But Scott, what do you have to say?
I mean, just to put a button on that, kind of the notion of the finish and that kind of thing. He's only got three finishes. It's been a while since he's finished a fight.
Yeah.
He's not really a giant finisher, especially now that he's gotten to those upper reaches of divisions. I just don't think that's the type of thing we're gonna have to see from him. He's gonna be one of those guys who's winning, not eking out decisions, but man, he's more of like you can't put him away. He may not put you away, but he could really put a hurting to you. And in this fight, obviously, look, he did everything he did to outclass Bilal Muhammad. He made somebody who, again, as we said at the start, he started the year with that title around his waist. He was the champion of this weight class. Now he's lost two in a row, but it's a good win. I think he really could actually have done enough to win this potential championship opportunity. There is some buzz around his name. I do think though if he really means this and if he's going to stick to his guns here, it might be a miscalculation to say I'm not fighting again. You won't see me until I'm fighting a title because the climate
Agreed.
is not such that supports it. There's too many options. We just talked about them, and frankly, we put him at number 4 of our threats to beat the champ kind of thing. And I wonder how much different that is than some other people. So I don't know. I don't think that's the right leg to stand on. I think he's gonna the
Yep.
better thing to do in a dog pile like this is take out another dog. And I don't think if he's really not willing to do that, unless that's what the UFC really wants to do, and there's a good opportunity, he's probably making a mistake.
Unless he's waiting for a pullout. I guess anything happens for a pullout, but that I wouldn't bet on it.
I don't think that's what fighters wait on. I don't think they're sitting around saying maybe somebody pulls out of a fight that's not even scheduled. So, like in my
Then I
mind.
just don't see the roadmap then, other than that. I don't know.
Yeah, I would say in a vacuum, the win on its own would be warranting of a title shot, but just because of what's going on at welterweight and just how many names there are and people coming off of big wins, that's just
And again, he
tough.
lost to Shavkat.
Hmm. Yeah, that's
You
another
know
thing
that
too.
it's not that long ago. We remember that fight. I know he was competitive, but again, he still lost the fight. If he had won that fight, he should have after
Totally.
that one been like, "You won't see me until," because then he would have had all the momentum.
Yeah,
This is a
Right.
different climate. It just doesn't work.
yeah, fair enough. Well, let's talk about Bilal Muhammad, who obviously was on the losing end of the fight. Scott, I'll throw this to you. Where does he go from here after 2 losses in a row, like you mentioned?
He's done as a title contender. I think we know that. At 37 years old, he's not getting any younger. This is just that part of his career has now ended, and he didn't look all that good in the ways that he used to be threatening and in the takedowns and that kind of thing. So the tide I think is just going against the old guard right now, and he is a part of that old guard. He's probably got to defend his spot again, just like he did here. So I could see the UFC maybe trying to book him against like a Gabriel Bonfim, right? Give Bonfim that opportunity to leap into that group with those other elite 170 pounders that we're talking about. But yeah, I don't know what Bilal Muhammad is anymore as far as the UFC, from the UFC's perspective.
Eric, what do you think?
Not a good spot for him. I mean, but this is what happens, right? This is how fighting goes. I'm sure, like he was on top for a good amount of time, so he had a good career. I think I mean, I don't want to say that he's like in the same spot as like a, I don't know, like maybe you could fight like a Colby Covington, like kind of just do like the big fights where it's like there's a lot of trash talk and maybe you're the curtain jerker of the main card type of thing. Joaquin Buckley, Leon Edwards, something like that is kind of where I'm at with him.
Yeah,
Well, Colby's never going to fight him.
I don't know
Why
if I see
not?
that one. Yeah,
Why not?
Colby's
Colby doesn't want to fight anybody. That's why not.
no, yeah.
I want to see him fight.
You don't have to like it, but it's true. He doesn't want to fight anybody.
I'm indifferent. I'm cool with not seeing Colby again. But
Same.
He's got to fight on the White House. He has to fight on the White House.
yeah, well, let's talk about someone that Scott does like. Actually,
Scott.
let's talk about someone that Scott does like, and that's Kyoji Horiguchi. Look, he's smiling already.
All about
There we
Horiguchi.
go.
Here we
Yes, the Gooch, as some people like to call him. 9 years away from the UFC, if my math serves me correctly, and he comes
go.
back
9 years.
in pretty dang impressive fashion, submitting Tagir Ulanbekov, a part of the Nurmagomedov camp, no less. Scott, was this the Gooch that you were expecting in his UFC return?
Absolutely. He is a monster at 125 pounds. The only one who actually beat him down there was Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson. He's 10-1 overall. Then the rest of his record is fighting basically a bantamweight. He went 25-4 as a bantamweight, beating guys like Sergio Pettis last year. He had separate reigns as the Bellator and Ryzen champion at 135 pounds. Back in 2017, he subbed Manel Kopp, who obviously now is a fellow flyweight contender, or someone in the mix there anyway. I think at any point since, let's say, Mighty Mouse's departure from the UFC when he went in that little trade with one, I think at any point in that stretch, it is entirely possible to have pictured Horiguchi having become the flyweight champion of the UFC had he been there and been fighting. Even at 35 years old, like he's been on fire. I'm thrilled to have him back. And frankly, to beat someone like Ulanbekov, who, they call him a prospect. He's 34. He's more of an up and comer at an advanced age. But he had a lot of momentum and he absolutely just massacred him in every facet. The way he knocked him down and then submitted him in like such quick order in the third round. Like this is a guy who gives problems everywhere, and everyone's gonna remember the Gooch after this.
100%. Eric, I just want to get your thoughts on that performance, as impressive as it was.
Mind-blowingly good. Tagir Ulanbekov landed 6 significant strikes. This fight did not end in the first round, just to be clear. Horiguchi wins by submission in round 3, knocks him down twice, defending takedowns, looked incredible. Had a hilarious call out afterwards. Masterclass from Kyoji Horiguchi, who just might be Scott's favorite fighter. Is that fair to say?
I mean, he's certainly one of my most favorite to watch anyway. And I've had the pleasure of interviewing him before, and English is not his first language. He's working on it. He's making progress. We had a nice chat in as much English as he can get out there, but frankly, he's fun. I think the division's better for him being there. So yeah.
Yeah, I thought that performance. I mean, Scott, I know you've kind of tried to get me to understand how good Kyoji is, but my goodness, like coming in there, 35 years of age too. Flyweights, like as we kind of know, or at least in terms of trends, like the older weight classes, or the heavier weight classes tend to be where older fighters have, longer careers. That seems to be the sort of trend at flyweight, because the speed is so important. I mean, it just looks like his well-rounded game is just so good that he's able to stick with the youngins. I mean, I know, like you mentioned, Tagir is around the same age as he is, but it doesn't take anything away from that.
But again, he had a lot of momentum, and it just like, this is somebody who was beating guys. He was, I think, 6-1 as a flyweight. He beat guys like Cody Durden and Azat Maxim and all these people that are like really solid to pretty darn good flyweights. And he got into the rankings and he just obliterated Ulanbekov, who comes from, again, like you said, a really fantastic camp. This is not the type of thing that you would expect on paper to have happened otherwise, but this is a different level of fighter. He's still underranked in the UFC's rankings, which, I mean, again, we've talked about them before. The UFC's rankings are what they are. I think we have in Kyoji Horiguchi, we're talking about like a top 3 flyweight when it really comes down to it. So, yeah, I really hope that he gets his wish from that call out, right? I think we're about to talk about that, right?
Yes, so thank you for that segue, Scott. Eric, you're Mr. Box Office. Also, you got the chance to talk to Alexandre Pantoja, who was the subject of Kyoji Horiguchi's call-out. Scott Fontana also talked to Joshua Van, who will be at the other end of the octagon from Pantoja next weekend at UFC 323. So make sure you guys go ahead and check those out if you haven't already. But Eric, rather, getting confused with you guys right now. Let's talk about Alexandre Pantoja versus Kyoji Horiguchi. Do you think that would be a box office fight? I mean, the two of them in the same camp over at ATT. What do you think?
All right. Well, I guess it depends on how you define box office, right? For me, box office is there's a lot of trash talk, which there won't be here. There's a lot of respect between these two fighters. Alexandre Pantoja, when I was talking to him, was talking about like Kyoji Horiguchi is one of the best fighters in the world. Like when he comes in, when he's doing like a move, everybody comes to watch him do it because he has taught so many fighters at his gym different things, and that he helped Horiguchi's grappling get better while Horiguchi helped his striking get better, and they're kind of yin and yang together a little bit. So from that perspective, I don't even care about the box office as much because this probably wouldn't headline a main card of a premium live event, which is we have to get used to. This probably wouldn't headline it anyway, so I think as a co-main event, this would be fantastic. I would also like to see this headline a fight night. I think we've talked about that in the past. Now that pay-per-view doesn't exist anymore, why not do it? Go back to like flyweights or women's fights or the lower weight classes. Have them headline fight nights. I think that would be a nice little a freshness to the product. But yes, this is an awesome fight. Sign me up for it. And Pantoja, if he beats Joshua Van, it's kind of cleared out the division a little bit. Pantoja has beaten Manel Kape already. Horiguchi, by the way, just in my travels, found out that Horiguchi was a minus 1,000 favorite when he defeated Manel Kape. How crazy is that?
Wow. And one thing that I will say, though, is that in the interview, if you're looking forward to some trash talk, Pantoja did say, he was like, if there's one guy that I can trash talk with, it's Kyoji Horiguchi. So maybe the two of them have some good banter between them. But, Scott, I want to get your thoughts as well.
You know, I don't know if it quite gets to the level of box office like Eric was saying. But look, it's a fight that immediately injects intrigue into 125 pounds, which frankly, if Pantoja does get through Joshua Van, still has the title next weekend. I don't know how much intrigue there really would be. This is something that it needed, so it was good. It's good to have this now waiting on the horizon potentially.
Okay, so let's talk about another fight that happened on that card. Waldo Cortez Acosta. He's been in our, his name has been in our mouths a little bit recently. Obviously, short notice fight, 2 fights in 1 month, which the UFC definitely likes. He's 4-1 this year, 2 straight KO wins. Like I said, 2 days or a few days notice. Shamil Gaziev, he knocks out in the octagon. He says he wants another fight in December, and obviously the UFC loves that kind of attitude. Does his body of work push him to be in that heavyweight title conversation with all those attributes that I just mentioned before? Scott, I want to get your thoughts. What do you think?
And you also left out the fact that look, he's 4-1, but that one loss is to Sergey Pavlovich
Yes.
in August. So this is a pretty recent loss. So that's what complicates his case, right? It's a fascinating situation here. I do think normally I would be against that. I would say, oh, Pavlovich ought to be, ahead of him in line. But I don't know how close Pavlovich is to that title picture. And there are fresh fights that you can put together with Waldo Cortez Acosta. With this momentum, I think it would be negligent to ignore that. If they can obviously get the whole Tom Aspinall Ciryl Gane situation sorted out first, right? If for some reason Aspinall wins that fight, right? We still don't know now. It's starting to look like a much more interesting fight than it was. If Aspinall wins, I think it's almost a no-brainer. You have to put Cortez Acosta there because it's a fresh matchup and we don't have too many of them for Tom Aspinall. If Gane wins, you don't have a mandate here in the same way. You can actually go to Alexander Volkov, do that rematch that was so close the first time and put it over 5 rounds. I think people would actually be a little interested in that one. So it kind of depends on some opportunities here, but he's done everything he can to ingratiate himself to the UFC and put himself in that position. As we know, the UFC loves that type of stuff. If you're active, you can get yourself places, and especially if you're stepping up for short notice and say, "Get me on that next one." I mean, they're just gonna love you.
Yeah, Eric, what do you think?
I'd be remiss not to mention the Ante Delitza fight where Delitza has Juarez Cortez
Dalia.
Acosta on the absolute ropes, and then a foul opens the window back up for Cortez Acosta, who then wins the fight by knockout immediately after. What a world we live in here in mixed martial arts. Look, I mean, when we look at the
Real nice
ratings,
edge that was on there, yeah.
oh my God. So you look at the rankings, he's number 5. Curtis Blades is number 4. He's recovering from meniscus surgery, though. Pavlovich, he already fought and lost. So you could do Volkov, or you could do a rematch with Pavlovich. I think those are all fun options. But yeah, I mean, who's going to fight December 6th? I mean, sign me up, right? Like, I'm definitely intrigued. This is definitely a good way to maybe like rise your stock a little bit. We've seen fighters do this in the past. Hamza Chimaev famously, was an unknown and then fought twice in 6 days and then 3 times in a month. And, look where he is now. So this is not the worst move, especially when you're a heavyweight and it doesn't really seem like he's cutting weight. And if he's not taking that much damage, which he's taking a little bit of, but assuming he's not taking that much damage, it's not a bad move. Scott, what you got?
Can I throw out something wacky for you? Like this is so out of left field and it is not going to happen. It will not happen.
Okay.
But how fun would this be? And for me especially, this is a throwback to a different time. Imagine if they're trying to put together a fight for Waldo Cortez Acosta to get on there. They can't find anybody at the heavyweight who's really willing to step up on short notice for some reason or another. What if it's Alex Portan Pereira that he just goes up and takes a one-off fight at heavyweight just for funsies? This is the
I
type
love
of
it.
thing Anderson Silva would have done back in the day, and it like that was part of what was Anderson Silva's like almost superpower in the sense that like he would just
Yep.
go take these one-off fights at another weight class. He wasn't even pursuing the title. He would just go up
Yep.
there, mess around, knock somebody out, including Forrest Griffin, the most recent. He was the recently dethroned champion at 205, and then just come back down and keep doing his business at his weight class and defending the belt. This would be a really really fun throwback to that. It's not going to happen. I'm not saying that, but it would be so much fun.
I like it.
Poatan would do it too.
I
Yeah,
think he probably would. This is a particular matchup too that look, Cortez Acosta could certainly look for takedowns, but I think ideally there's probably a striking element to this fight, even on Cortez Acosta's side. So I think it'd be neat,
Pereira could
but
just manage distance
I'm
and leg kick
realistic
him.
about it.
Yeah, no, I
Yeah.
think that's a fun matchup. Sign me up. That would be awesome.
I like, and I mean, it seems like Poatan he wants to go up to heavyweight regardless. So
I feel like it's
It
gonna
would be
happen.
good
It certainly it
also.
will. It's not gonna be Waldo Cortez Acosta. He won't do it that way. When he goes up, it'll be for a title. That's what they do now, and I get
It
that.
would
And
have
it's
to,
not just
yeah.
him. That's the UFC.
yeah,
But
Right.
man, it would be so cool. We'd have a good time with it.
yes, absolutely.
There's risk involved. That's why.
Yeah, you can't
No,
risk
a lot.
Poatan. Yeah, especially because if he is moving up to heavyweight, it's not like he, you know, would be sticking around at light heavyweight in that aspect. So it's like he's in the new division and he just lost to Waldo Cortez Acosta, right? That's the risk that you're
Right.
kind of
Yeah,
running in
that'd
that.
be, and then you lose the John Jones
But
fight
it
and all
but
that.
it would just add to his whole thing, right? The aura of
Yeah,
Alex Poatan
speed
Pereira.
run.
Imagine we remember that he stepped up on short notice because this other guy wanted to fight on short notice. So he's like, yeah, I'll fight a heavyweight. I've never fought a heavyweight, but I'll fight this guy who's 4-1 this year, who's potentially in the title picture. Just go do it anyway. This is the type of thing that makes legacy so much different than just how many titles did they win and that kind of thing.
Right.
There are memories you can attach to them. And obviously, Poatan already has a lot of that, I think, anyway. He doesn't need to do it, but if he did, it'd be darn cool. And he'd be the type of guy you'd see doing it.
100%. And I think that wraps up the biggest things from UFC Qatar. But let us know in the comments what you thought of our takes. Let us know how you rank the 5 gentlemen that we had at welterweight. And let us know if we got anything wrong or if you agreed with those ones. Now, moving on, we do not have a fight to preview this weekend because of the holiday. But Scott, you did something very interesting about 3 weeks ago. So let's go back to that. Let us know what you did.
So, yes, about 3 weeks ago, it was actually the afternoon after I spoke to Jack Della Maddalena in our New York City studio. On November 7th, I headed down to Philadelphia for CFFC 148. And the Pennsylvania Athletic Commission, they granted the opportunity to shadow judge the fights that were taking place at the old ECW arena. They now call it 2300 Arena. So this was a very unique opportunity for me to do something that media members don't do. I can't think of another active or even past media member who actually legitimately sat in person as a shadow judge for an event. I hope I'm wrong. I hope there's actually someone out there, and if they are, shout them out. But yeah, I went down with my good buddy Dan Urban, who was my old Couch High Judges co-host. He is now a working judge who was working this event. But yeah, when I was there, saw some guys that you guys know, John Morgan, Dean Thomas. They did the commentary. Jake, I saw your guy Jake Noacker there. Yeah, it was a good time. It was a really cool experience.
All right, and before we dig into all about that experience, could you briefly explain for us what exactly is shadow judging?
So okay, so obviously we know about the judges that sit cage side. They're in those little chairs around there. What a shadow judge can do is they are someone who will also sit cage side. I was seated in particular next to one of the judges' seats. I was in like a smaller chair next to them. They had the high chair. I was in a little lower chair because they didn't have them available. Um, so I sit there and I sit in basically the same perspective as the judge. And I'm sitting there and I'm trying to watch and score the action. And I'll turn in a round card. I have to do it immediately. Write down my score on. I can show you. It's a little piece of paper that looks like this. Hopefully we
Hmm.
got that close enough. And you put down your score. You mark down if there was any points deducted on there as well. And then yeah, it was a fascinating experience to be able to do that. You're just kind of putting your scores in. Mine don't count though. They're not like legit scores.
Eric,
So
you
it's
got
like a
any? Yeah.
chess, like yeah. So it's like practice.
In a way, it's almost like a trial run, you know? You really legitimately experience what that is like. But
Okay, and
it's
you just
not yeah.
you did the whole card.
Yes, I did the whole card start to finish. There were believe 2 or 3 amateur fights to start. And then I did those, and that actually you do that on a different piece of paper that looks like this. And in that situation, you're putting down each round before you do it. These you have to turn in immediately each round ends. This you do for the whole fight and turn it in at the end.
Okay.
It's a
In
little different for Amy.
My question was going to be, what was something that you noticed that was different from sitting cage side scoring versus watching on TV?
I'm sorry.
What was something that you noticed that was different from watching and scoring cage side versus on TV?
So when you're watching cage side, you only have one angle. Like if you're watching on the TV, they're going to pivot to some different cameras. Sometimes those cameras even move around. There was one that was hanging directly over my head that was on a crane that would kind of move around a little bit here and there. Um, you're stuck in that static place, right? You can move your head a little bit to try and maneuver to get a better position. You'll see some judges will do that sometimes during fights as well. Certain judges in particular like to really maneuver. But yeah, if you're trying to follow the action where they go, you are really you gotta understand you've one view. That's it. You do have screens. There were screens in this arena in particular. So overhead, I could look up if there was an angle that I couldn't see from my seat, and I could potentially, get a better view at it. But also, that camera I just mentioned sometimes got in the way, so I didn't always have a good look at that either.
Yeah, and I guess going off of that, so you didn't have any screens like say like right in front of you that like were for you to look at, or the other judges they didn't have that as well, correct?
No, everyone had kind of the same situation. Yeah, there was no, so the screens that like the little screens that you've probably seen at UFC shows, they're kind of unique to UFC shows. There are some promotions will do it from time to time, but it's very rare. I mean, that's a resource. You need to pay for that. That doesn't come from the commission.
Now, when you're sitting cage side, were there any fouls? That's always like one thing that I've always wondered. Like, how is reporting of fouls to judges?
Well, there certainly wasn't anything that was point deducted, so we didn't have to
Hmm.
mark that down or anything like that. But you'll see when they do take a point, they'll bring the fighter to the middle of the cage and they'll hold up their hand and go 1 point, and they will look to three different places. It's those judges to let them know that they have been deducted a point. Depending on the commission, sometimes the scorekeeper will deduct the point at the end, and sometimes it's on the judge to put that point down. I don't know what I would have been tasked with doing, but obviously you saw on the paper I held up before, it does have a little box there for minus penalty. So I would assume that I had to put that down.
Interesting. And like, were there any clash of the heads or anything like that? I always wondered how, because like sometimes I know that there's clashes of heads in fights, and I believe that previously like some UFC commentators are like, the judges have no idea if that was clash of heads or not, or whatever. Anything that you would do or anything like that?
I didn't notice any particular clash of heads. I get nothing that sticks out in my mind 3 weeks later, right? And I haven't watched the fights live since or on replay ever since then. But basically, unless it's pointed out that this was an illegal blow, you're kind of supposed to score it. That's just the way
Hmm.
it works. So, you can identify it and say, well, he headbutted him. But I mean, you can also not score it because if you see, you don't have to like hold it against him. But like,
Mm-hmm.
it I mean, technically it's a legal blow if the referee isn't calling it illegal. That's really what it comes down to.
Yeah, and one question that I had for you is coming out of this experience, do you have a newfound respect for maybe the judges that are sitting cage side and the way that they do things now, having been in that same position, or were these things that you kind of already knew and expected?
I think I'm probably one of the very few out there who actually already understood it to a point, right? I never experienced it, but I did understand, hey, look, it is not an easy job. There is going to be times where the action moves to like a part of the cage where, maybe there's a little bit of a bend on the cage because of the contours that they make the fence or whatever, or just the angle you're at. And maybe you just won't see anything there, I was always aware that that could be a thing. Experiencing it is a different thing, right? Because you still got to figure out, okay, you can only score what you saw. You can't just say, oh, he got hurt. I didn't see it. I guess it must have been something. We don't know. You can't score that. So that it helps you really having been through it to understand that. One thing that was kind of neat though, this was something I hadn't really prepared myself for was if you're at one panel of the cage where I was, right? and the two fighters end up basically rushing toward the cage. Maybe they're defending a takedown or whatever it is, right? Maybe it's some velocity coming your way. There's a bunch of big bodies coming your way. You see a fence there, but also you're thinking, oh man, I gotta stop myself. Now I didn't go, panicked or anything like that, but there was a little bit of the first time, especially, and even the second time that it happened, I was kind of like a little like not as prepared for it as I thought I would
Flinched
be,
a little bit.
and you recoiled just a little. Yeah, absolutely. You're a little surprised, but that was unique. That was something that obviously I've sat pretty close. I've sat about 15 feet away from fights live because of the maybe even closer. I don't even know how far it is, but because of the nature of the media row and that kind of thing. But this was much closer. You're literally like 2 feet away from, maybe 3 feet away from the actual fence. It's a lot closer. It's a lot different.
Last one for me, grappling exchanges. How hard was that to um, judge?
I mean, obviously you have an understanding of grappling, you can judge it, but you to be able to score, a submission attempt, you need to be able to see how deep it's in, right? And that can get tricky. There was a leg lock in particular that actually me and one of the judges, we were kind of trying to figure out how it was going to get classified because it was, we don't have the benefit of hindsight. We have one angle at it and it was kind of hard to see. I thought it was a knee bar. I think we weren't or no, they believe that this judge in particular thought it was a knee bar, and I kind of thought it was a heel hook, but it didn't look like your traditional type of heel hook from our angle. It did get noted as a heel hook after the fact, but yeah, you need to have a good angle at those submissions, but it really helps to have a good understanding of submissions. If you're not well versed in them and the way they work and the way they look good and the way they're safe and the way they're not, then it gets hard to score that. You need to be well rounded in that way. It's a little easier to say, okay, this guy got punched in the face, it hurt. There are different types of strikes where maybe that's a little bit less so, but grappling in particular, you need some expertise. And I have some of that for sure, and that helped. But as far as the like what you're seeing and the angles you get, yeah, it just that expertise does play into that. It helps you identify it better.
And to round it out for me, Scott, or to round it out in general, what would you say was your biggest takeaway from this experience and what you gained the most from it? Someone who's very interested in judging, maybe if it was the experience or anything specific.
I think what I gained from it in particular was just it's another perspective that now I can say, hey, look, I know what this is like, actually. I can speak to it from experience one time, right? It is what it is. And I didn't undergo the pressure of my score actually counting, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there was that. Like I'm turning this in and I'm trying to go as quick as I can, but also, I know, even if I'm not thinking about it, I could put down the wrongest of wrong scores and it just doesn't matter. These people, they if they take their job serious enough, they want to be right. They want to get it right because it depends on, the wins and losses of a sport, but also, the financial opportunities of a fighter one way or the other. And I don't know how much they're thinking about that in those moments, but that is the pressure that goes into that. So, um, being able to not have that, it's a different thing. But just the fact that I sat there and I can lean on it and say, hey, I know at least a little bit about what that angle looks like and the sounds of it and, the feel of when somebody lands that hard punch. You get it again, like from where I'm at Media Row, but even closer and even better when you're even closer. And that was nice. I liked that part of it. It was a really cool experience. And I say I recommend anyone who does the job that I do, who covers fights, you really ought to do it. I mean, most of these commissions are going to let you do it. It was not jumping through hoops for me to be able to do this.
Wow, already. I mean, I'd love to do it. Eric, how about you?
Yeah, maybe. Let's do it. I mean, I think Scott talked about this well before we had a podcast with me. I think I was going to go to one of the classes with you at one point.
Okay.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, well, the class is one thing too, right? That's another element of it. This is a little bit of a different thing, but I would say
'Cause you're
don't shadow judge
licensed.
if you've never done it because you won't gain much from it. You won't really understand it.
Yeah, you're licensed, right?
No, no. I
Oh, I thought you
I
were.
passed the test so that I can be licensed. I have to apply and pay money to be licensed. I'm not
Important
doing that. No, thank
clarification. Important
No, thank
clarification.
you. I mean, it would be a fun thing to do, but I don't think I can do what I do and that. So it's kind of it just doesn't work.
Fair enough. Well, Scott, that was a definitely very interesting conversation. Behind the scenes, pulling back the curtain of what these guys go through on a weekly basis. But, Scott, I'm going to throw it right back to you. Let's get to quick hits.
Yeah, so there's some big news actually. We were talking a little bit about the first events of next year. We finally starting to get a peek behind that curtain of the UFC's first premium numbered event of the Paramount Plus era. Arnold Allen is set to face Jean Silva at UFC 324, January 24th at T-Mobile Arena, Las Vegas. This is reported from MMA Fighting. Just about every element of what I just said is news. So that's kind of an interesting thing there. Former Bellator welterweight champion Yaroslav Amosov, 28-1 record he's bringing to the UFC finally for his UFC debut against Neil Magny on December 13 at the Apex. That's per multiple reports. We'll see that, I guess, just about 2 weeks away, and that's an interesting debutante right there, Amosov. Sean Brady, we mentioned him earlier in this show. In the wake of his loss to Michael Morales, he spoke on his Brady Bags show podcast about a potential move down to 155 pounds down the line. It's not an immediate thing. It didn't make it sound that way, but he did say while it would be a very hard thing for him to do, he's kind of at max muscle at 170 pounds per the UFC PI. He's got the frame of a lightweight, and it's something that he's at least thinking about for the future. So potential down the road change for Sean Brady. I think that'd be an interesting spot for him. UFC 322. Looking back just a couple weeks here, there was that brawl we all know about. Dylan Dennis, that's back in the news as New York City Mayor Eric Adams, who's on his way out the door. He has vowed the perpetrators of this whole thing will be held accountable. Story is far from over, so we'll keep our eye on that. Overseas in Europe, KSW, the Polish standout promotion, it is announced that they will be instituting a new penalty for fighters who miss weight. So they will now start, if they miss weight, they'll start round one with a point deduction, and that is on top of fines that would already be instituted for that transgression. And we're going to close out here with one fight that just happened not too long ago. We're Wednesday here. This was Sunday. Gable Steveson, the former NCAA and Olympic heavyweight wrestling champion, he won his second MMA fight with a 24-second knockout of Kevin Hine at the Anthony Pettis FC show. Impressive win for my money. He's the biggest heavyweight prospect since probably Daniel Cormier 16 years ago. So keep an eye on him. This guy might be, we might see him in the UFC very, very soon.
Some very, very high praise. I have this funny image going back to the 322 thing. I have this funny image of Eric Adams going over to Dagestan to go get them, and then he comes back 2-3 years. Comes back
2-3 years,
insanely good.
And he's a good wrestler. Yeah, he's a really good wrestler. Then
my
Sambo.
Well, let's get into the final round and talk about our homework assignment from last week, Vitor Belfort versus Michael Bisping. And I will confess I did know the end result of this one going into it, but watching it play out was definitely something. I mean, it was a relatively back and forth fight, especially Vitor having a pretty slow start in that first round. And then, my God, that head kick. It's... Watching it again, I'm actually in the moment, it didn't look like it was something that would have hit him in the eye. It looked more to the temple, which is a little confusing to me in hindsight about how that actually messed up Bisping's eye. But I'm not sure if you guys have any knowledge about exactly how that went down.
Good question. I'm not sure the answer though. I would venture to guess that it didn't help. Right? It was definitely a nasty, nasty knockout.
Yeah, it was obviously the detached retina. That's what Bisping has pointed to as the cause of him losing the vision in that eye. But there's been, I don't know, depending on who you ask, it sounds like there was some concerns about maybe was there something that he came into the fight with. I don't know. But yeah, obviously devastating kick. You got to see, I think, Vitor Belfort at the peak of his middleweight powers, in the TRT Tour era, as it is mostly referred to as, for I think we know why. Basically, another thing that I wanted to point out for this fight, it wasn't just so that you could see, okay, this is the root of what happened with Michael Bisping and his eye and that kind of thing, but also I don't know if you guys understood just how popular Vitor Belfort was in Brazil,
Mm.
Yeah.
but the chants of Olé with Vitor in there, I
Yes.
mean, they were
Yeah.
vociferous. People love him in Brazil. He's a monster star, and that was part of why when he did fight Anderson Silva and then beat Anderson Silva beat him, Silva gained so much in his own country because
Hmm.
he gained all of that star. He basically took his aura in Brazil and
Mm.
became a mega star as opposed to,
Highlander.
hey, he's a pretty darn
Wow,
good fighter.
that's good
Yeah,
note.
it was a lot like that. Very fascinating fight in that sense. But obviously there were a lot of fights in that area. This was just again, it's the Vitor Belfort circa 2010s experience.
Yeah, and I will say, having you said that, that does rejog some of that. I caught that in the fight, like when it cuts to the crowd shots of them afterwards, and I did Vitor.
Yeah.
So
So
That's a
popular.
good point,
Well
though. I
loved
didn't
there.
realize how
Yeah.
popular he was in Brazil.
Yeah.
and
Megastar.
what do we have up next? Since we don't have any fights this weekend, do we have a bigger homework assignment, Scott?
I think you know you do. It is the Mirko Crow Cop experience. I've been waiting to do this one for a while, and obviously we don't have that major fight card to talk about. There are certainly fights on the smaller promotions throughout the world, that kind of thing. But I've put together an 11 fight card for you guys to watch, all Mirko Crow Cop all the time, and we're gonna go in order. Heath Herring, the fight against him in 2003, against Igor Vovchanchin, same year against Dos Caras Jr., who I don't know if you're aware of who that is, guys. That is former WWE champion Alberto Del Rio in 2003, same year. Yes, he moonlighted as a
No
fighter as
way.
well.
Wow.
Yes,
I did not
absolutely.
know that.
Surprise! Welcome to the show.
That's
Then we got
crazy.
2004 fights. We've got Ron Waterman, Shungo Oyama, and Alexander Emelianenko, the brother of Fedor. 2005 fights. We got Mark Coleman and Ibrahim Magomedov. 2006, we got a couple fights, including Hirohiko Yoshida and Vanderlei Silva. And then 2007, we're going to wrap up with Gabriel Gonzaga, his UFC debut.
That is quite a list of fights. I'm pretty excited for it.
They're all look. You're not going to wait around long for each of these fights. I'm not sitting you there for decisions. Frankly, just wait for the fun. Okay, guys.
All right, all right. I mean, that's a pretty good way to put a stamp on that. Scott, what do we have this week in MMA?
This week in MMA, 9 years ago, on November 27, 2016, Australia time, Alexander Volkanovski made his UFC debut with a victory on home soil against Melbourne, or in Melbourne, I should say. Second round TKO of Yusuke Kasuya, the start of an amazing career from the great.
Cue the flute of Down Under. And then if people are looking for one more fight, because, I mean, if there's any weekend for one more fight, it's this one. Scott, what do we got?
So I'll be honest, there was not a lot of promotions that are airing domestically that I was all that like hyped about and wanted to mention here. So I'm just going with one fight that's in Costa Rica. I don't even know if you can watch it in America, but it's at TNX 1125 is the name of this event. But it features my bantamweight prospect, women's bantamweight prospect from that special we did, Regina Tarin. She is fighting Yuriva Jimenez in a flyweight co-main event. So it's her first fight since she had to withdraw from a planned Dana White Contender Series fight. But I'm curious about that one because I did highlight her as the prospect there.
Fair enough. And you've been doing pretty good with your prospects so far. Besides, I believe Shamil Gaziev was... we don't talk
No,
about
I didn't
that
have
one.
him.
Oh, okay, never mind then. Excuse me.
No, although I believe my bantamweight prospect, who was the LFA champion, Pires, I forget his first name, but he did lose. So that was the one I actually took a loss on. But it is
My
what it is.
featherweight prospect, Leroy Murphy, looks great.
Prospect.
Dude, he's going places, man.
He
I like
is.
this young up and comer.
Alrighty, I think these folks have had enough hearing from us for this Wednesday special of Against the Cage because of Thanksgiving. So, happy Thanksgiving to everyone tomorrow. Hope you enjoy. Scott Fontana, Erich Richter, happy Thanksgiving to you and yours, and I will see you guys next week.